Oh Lucy is the story of a lonely Tokyo woman, Setsuko Kawashima, portrayed by Shinobu Terajima, and her journey of discovery as she joins an unconventional English class held in a shady-looking hotel and taught by an American tourist named John, played by Josh Hartnett. Sort of the movie in a nutshell. Japanese filmmaker Atsuko Hirayanagi, her 22-minute MFA thesis multi-award winning short film of the same name, served as the basis for her feature film directorial debut of Oh Lucy, which we are honored to be able to talk to her about as she joins us here now on Celluloid Dreams.
Well, thanks for having me here.
I'm glad you could join us. I didn't realize you had attended San Francisco State.
Yeah.
And you graduated with a BA in theater arts.
Right.
Not film, huh?
I was like doing things that I actually wasn't good at. I think I was challenging myself to be courageous. That's when in a nutshell. After filmmaking actually was I think really something I wanted to do. I mean, I always knew that I was going to eventually be a director. But I think initially I wanted to challenge myself to things that I'm not good at, which is it's funny expose myself to it.
Well, theater can be confrontational and scary, I think, in ways that
I was miserable.
Oh, really? Oh, you did it because you didn't feel you were good enough at it.
I usually dive into things that I feel fearful about. And no, but initially I had a bigger agenda, I think, as a 20-something or whatever. But I think because I wanted, when you're young, you want to change the world. And actually, I was exchange student in Los Angeles when I was 17. Initially, I came to learn English so that I can attend to American University eventually to learn theater arts. And back in late 80s, there weren't any Japanese actors, in Hollywood.
Right.
So I thought I'm going to be the first one to change the industry. That was it. So it didn't come from love of acting,
Did you know English when you came here?
No, not at all. I mean, I knew how to read, rudimental English.
It was a lot of different reading and speaking.
Yeah, speaking it. And also we are taught by Japanese professors who have thick accent. So yes. I couldn't understand the simplest thing that the people trying to ask me initially. Like I couldn't understand it. It was a completely foreign language.
That is fearful.
Yeah.
Jumping into a culture where you don't know the language,
right.
And then you've just got, you have to either sink or swim.
Right. So yeah. I shut down at high school. I didn't speak a word probably in class.
Because your English is impeccable.
No. It's been 20-something years.
Okay, all right. Is it anticlimactic a little bit having already been at Cannes in France and Raindance in the UK, and after having been nominated for the Indie Spirit Award for Best First Feature to be here now doing press for your movie?
What's the question?
Well, you've been living with the movie for a while now. It was in Cannes.
Right.
It was in Raindance in the UK.
Right.
And you were nominated for an Indie Spirit Award.
Right.
So you've been living with it for a long time. And I'd
right.
say, is it anticlimactic now that you're doing press?
No,
official press for the actual theatrical release?
It never ends.
It never ends.
I want to move on to actually next project, to tell you the truth. Press is not something that I'm good at either. So this part of it is not something I'm happy doing it.
I wanted to start the interview by saying, "Hi, my name is Tim." Sorry, it's a joke for the movie. Come on, know what I'm referring to, right? Yeah, funny sequence in the movie. I notice you have no tattoos either.
No.
Tattoos figure prominently.
I have a pierced ear, which I don't use anymore. That was for me initially. What was
I think when you stop piercing it, doesn't it go away?
I guess so. It doesn't close. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of the first things I did when I came to America. That was American thing to do. So it's equivalent of having a tattoo, I guess.
I have lots to talk about with
right.
this film, but I want to the opening scene, without giving anything away, on the subway platform. Were you making any kind of a statement about life in Tokyo?
No.
Because here in the West, I've read stories about pressure that students undergo, young people undergo to live up to certain expectations that the family has, and that that was a good way to get your audience into the movie with that opening scene, because it totally came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if you were...
I wasn't trying to make a statement. I never tried to do that when I'm making film. It's simply I want to tell this woman about this character, about her story, and because I wanted to tell her psyche about who she is. And I cannot say Setsuko 43 standing in a crowd, suicidal, and how can you explain that? So that's why I have to have that too. That's her part of her psyche, and it could be her if it wasn't him. So to me that's why he's there, and when something also he's the catalyst in a way to trigger something that stir her.
And a lot of people were wearing surgical masks.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
You should go to Japan.
Oh, okay.
It's not exaggeration.
Really?
And apparently now it's a kind of everybody. It's also the hay fever too. So everybody is wearing it now.
Was it something in the atmosphere?
Hay fever?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it's the pollens so much around
okay.
it. Yeah, that
because it almost looked like a science fiction opening.
Yeah, but no, seriously, you should go to Japan and go in a subway, and you'll be surprised. Everybody's wearing masks. It wasn't an exaggeration at all.
Well, that was interesting, because that's something to look for people to look for when they see the movie. But I'd like to talk with you for a moment about the film, about the way in which you utilize humor in Oh, Lucy, because it's funny. I knew little about the film when I saw it, and afterward, thinking about it and reading about it, I was startled to learn that you had intended it as a comedy, because it seemed very serious to me. And I thought, gee, what happened to my sense of humor, But having learned that it was a comedy, then when I ran the film again through my mind, it did, in fact, seem amusing, but only in retrospect, because it felt a little awkwardly painful watching these characters, for me, as opposed to funny. Maybe it was like a little embarrassing. Maybe it was because I saw myself to some extent in these characters. I guess my question relative to the film and the story is, what's humorous to you? What do you find funny? It seemed to me that maybe the mess. I don't want to answer this question for you, but when I thought of the messiness of the human condition, then I started to see the humor in it. But I'm curious, what's humorous to you?
To me, humorous to me is the things that we're not supposed to laugh, except when you're watching in theater. Or about, or you have a permission to do that in a way, because like I always say this, but I'm the kind of person who laughs at the funeral, because there's always kind of crazy things happen. And then like, for example, like someone falls in 6 feet under or something. It's tragic. And at the same time, you want to laugh. But at the same time, you're not supposed to laugh, So those are the moments.
When you were a child, did you ever laugh at a funeral? Did you ever get
so many times I got
by your parents?
So many times I got into accidents. But when you're a child, you are okay to laugh,
I suppose.
That's the thing, because you're adult, you're not supposed to. So that's another thing because it's not because you don't have the impulse to laugh. It's just we are more controlled. We are taught to by society that's not appropriate. That's the only difference. But we are still the same child,
We used to do that when we were kids. We would, in church, we would laugh at whatever.
I mean, like someone farts at the funeral and stuff, and then like we laugh, and then as kid, but then adults are like trying to hold their laughter.
Okay. But what's interesting about the film, though, I mean, seeing it as a comedy, and I can't wait to watch it again through the prism of a comedy, but it kind of did walk that fine line between seriousness and something to laugh at or with.
Right.
I remember Hitchcock often spoke of, as an example, about the lines between comedy and tragedy and how they're blurred. He would cite the scene of the gentleman, dressed nicely, reading a newspaper, walking towards the manhole cover, right? And he falls down the hole and everybody roars with laughter. But then he said, suppose you take a second look down the hole. The guy's face is bleeding. He's all cut up. His wife calls for an ambulance. And wouldn't you feel ashamed that you laughed at that? But we do anyway.
Right.
Like slipping on a banana peel is painful.
Yeah.
But we laugh. We find it funny.
Yeah.
That's what there was a lot of that in your movie.
Yeah. I think it's even funnier too when you try to hide the situation, you know?
Yes.
Like if you should feel ashamed of yourself and you start laughing yourself, but then some people say like as if nothing happened, they start walking and then like their face is red, but then they act like they're not affected by it. That's to me is the most hilarious. Like why can't you just accept the fact that you fail?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think because this film deals with a lot of to do with masks. So that's why maybe this whole unpeel, like a mask moments where you would laugh or, you know, you take out the mask and then present yourself as who you are, you know.
And we should probably say in the film, Setsuko, the main character, she goes to learn English and the methods are kind of unorthodox. The teacher gives her another name, Lucy, which I was going to ask you about that too. Why Lucy?
So, the secret is that initially I wanted to make a film called OL. It stands for office lady in Japan. Office lady is like secretarial, female. It's very Japanese made up English word called OL. So that's who she is. Setsuko is office lady, and then they never move up on a career. They're gonna be secretary forever. And so O and Lucy. So I wanted to have a Lucy. The name that starts with L. And then I was saying, Lucy, that's it, Lucy. Like, like Lucy is like very quintessential in a way, like American name, you know.
Right. Well, I know a lot of people thought Lucille Ball.
Yeah, that too. Like the first thing that this blonde, this funny girl, you know, like in a way. Yeah, I did think about her also. Yeah.
And she's made to wear a blonde wig.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting conceit.
Yeah, I think blonde wig gives people power. Like, gives mostly like Japanese people. There are a point in where a lot of athletes in Japan are bleaching their hair blonde. I think that's because
really?
Yeah, like I think that feels something to do with empowerment when you're fighting with competing with like players from other countries, and then oftentimes Japanese as island, we are from island and we only know Japanese. It's a homogeneous country in Japan, so when you meet foreigners we get intimidated. So by doing so, I think maybe they felt like they're somehow empowered. There is that blonde, I'm sure for Americans too, right? When you bleach, like when you put your hair blonde, there's some kind of
blonde
empowerment.
Blonde is the
Marilyn
stereotype.
Monroe and all these iconic people, and
Jean Harlow.
Yeah. So I think it has something to do with some kind of empowerment.
I know probably how you're going to respond to this, but I wanted to make a point about the uniqueness of this movie. It's really unlike any film I've ever seen. There's a lot of elements in the film that are recognizable in an archetypal sense, but it plays. I take a lot of notes when I see a film, and this was one of the few films that I didn't know what to write down, and I didn't take any notes. But when the movie was over, everything about it stayed with me. I couldn't shake the images. I couldn't shake the characters, and it took it took some time. So I guess my question is like, on some level you had to set out to make something different. In some way, you had to be conscious of that, or were you not? Like on purpose, you tried to do something different. I always try to find a character that I've never seen on screen before. Okay. That's maybe what you are referring to. But at the same time, but everything about the movie, it's hybrid film also, co-production. Yeah, and I've lived in both countries. So I've seen a movie that was made by American person about Japan, or Japanese person making a film about America maybe. But maybe it's because I've lived in both countries, and kind of I am also kind of anomaly in both countries. So that's maybe it's so funny now because kind of it merged. I feel like both culture merged in me right now. So. It's funny that the way you're talking, because the film is, in a way, it's about identity, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it deals with that directly. Yeah. So I think that's why maybe you feel
So because it's not really one-sided, like it's not perspective from the American people or Japanese people. It's something in the maybe middle. That maybe that's what you're referring to. That you cannot really kind of feel like
it's difficult to describe it to people. I just say, just go see it, and then we can talk about it because it's so different.
I mean, like it's so funny though. In Japan, this film is perceived as foreign film, not Japanese film, and then from America, it's perceived as foreign film.
Yeah.
So it doesn't belong to either countries, you know. Maybe that's what. But at the same time, there's some kind of familiarity from both countries. They feel. There's definitely something that Japanese people can completely relate to, and the American people can completely relate to. So that's why that's maybe what you're referring to. I don't know. I'm making up right now.
And I'm just talking as it occurs to me to say these things. One of the things too I liked, and which was kind of painful actually to watch unfold, is the notion of having specific needs, and then like our main character here, and then misinterpreting another person's words or actions through the lens of those needs.
Right.
You know, like the classic situation of needing love, for example, from someone or something outside of ourselves, and then being on the receiving end of someone being nice to us, and then thinking that nice behavior meant something other than the nice act that it was intended.
Right.
That was beautifully done in this film. Really, and very, very believable and realistic. Even though there was also something kind of heightened about the tone. And it's interesting too that both of the main characters, well, everyone, but the two main characters, they seem to want to connect with others in different ways, but they come up against each other.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. I mean, for me, they are same people, all of them, all the characters, and they were supposed to meet for one because of this act of synchronicity, basically, because what Setsuko decided to take on this journey.
Yes.
Somehow she started attracting these people in her life, and somewhat mirror image of who she is, and everybody is in a way dealing with the same thing, you know. But then Setsuko finally finds herself in the end.
It's interesting too how the sort of unraveling of people's lives, and again, I don't know if you meant this as a commentary, but it takes place in LA, which I found interesting because that's a place where a lot of people go. Some people make it. Some people are kind of destroyed by the system. A lot of famous actors and actresses that were destroyed. I remember, I think it was, I just made it. Truman Capote once famously said, it's a scientific fact for every year you remain in LA, you lose 10 points of your IQ.
Oh my God, he said that?
He did say that, but there was something about that the movie that reminded me of that.
Where is Capote from?
Capote, he was from the South, wasn't he, Mark? Where was he from? Somewhere in the South.
New Orleans?
Yeah, New Orleans, yeah.
Wow, and then he's lived in LA.
He wrote screenplays. And
I didn't know he wrote screenplays.
He did some work, you know. He was a writer for hire and got paid a lot of money for basically not doing very much. But anyway.
Maybe he's talking about himself.
Maybe. Okay, so how would you view, since it's kind of a hot topic right now, this movie, this story, through the prism of the Me Too movement? You know, I know the movement was born out of the hashtag that was used on social media to help demonstrate the prevalence of sexual assault and harassment. But the purpose of the movement was to empower women through empathy, especially vulnerable women. And Setsuko is vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious if your thoughts on that, if you have any.
I have no thoughts on that. And the movie, obviously, I wasn't thinking Me Too movement when I was writing it.
Obviously not, because
it's hard for me to make that statement or comment because then I'm going to be kind of making up things and, you know, it's not honest coming from me. Okay. So I don't know what to say about that.
I think, though, if those who choose to view it through that, I think will find it particularly interesting, aside from the fact
is there a particular scene or the storyline that you felt like it's part of the Me Too movement?
It made me think of it because
It's just
because of the way that she was treated by some people. I thought.
Are you talking about the car scene or?
Yeah.
I see. It kind of, obviously there was no Me Too movement when we were filming it either, but it does, I guess, touch upon the fine line, isn't it? Like the whole situation. I'm assuming, but I'm not gonna say anything because it's gonna spoil the movie.
Role playing plays also a significant role in this film. Could you talk about that?
Role playing. So that's whole about identities, and they sometimes like, because I experienced the acting before, that the whole, sometimes when you're trying to be someone else, sometimes like your honest part of yourself comes out through the character. So that whole experience might be also like kind of in a way living in these characters or the situations, you know, like sometimes like when you're trying to be someone else, actually it's not necessarily true. It's sometimes you're showing who you are, part of who you are in a way. Yeah.
Josh Hartnett is in this movie, and he's really wonderful. He said in an interview when the film premiered at Raindance that the Japanese crew was extremely polite. And I'm curious, were there any issues involving language? For example, like when English was spoken? I remember, this is another story your movie made me think of. When Andre Previn, the film composer and conductor, he was doing a concert in Japan with Julie Andrews, and he was working with Japanese musicians. And he said something about a passage. He says, well, let's not, noodle around so much. And he said, and then like 10 seconds later, somebody that was working on the crew brought him a bowl of noodles to eat. And I'm just curious. I'm just curious if the crew, if there were any issues with the crew and how you dealt with that. And obviously you speak English, but I understand Josh didn't speak Japanese.
Yeah, but Josh's shoot was like I think 1 day or something, or like really like one and a quarter day kind of thing.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was very intense shoot for the day when we are shooting actually classroom scene, and then he had a severe jet lag, so he was having hard time like with the lines, and then he was extremely apologetic, but then he was like, I completely understand when you have a jet lag and suddenly you're shooting this big like a scene, and so I think it was, for him, it was like he just did it and then kind of finished, and he doesn't even I
hadn't realized it was that in and out so fast.
In and out. That was, he said, Japan shoot was kind of in and out.
Which is like one take you did?
Yeah, I only had the chance to do like 1 or 2 takes, and it's partially because like Japanese actors are not used to coverage. Do you know what coverage is?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but
different angles.
Yeah, different angles with so lead actress were getting worn out because she was doing full like 100% in each take. So I quickly figured out, and then I basically shoot her first 1-2 takes, and then like relax now. So, and then kept shooting, then shoot like Josh's side and that kind of thing. So every time like, now you can relax, and then we don't have many we don't do so much coverage in Japan. Like maybe 1 or 2 angles or 3 angles or something like that.
Do you think that's just because? I mean, I know I would attribute some of that to the preparedness of the director. I mean, if they knew what they wanted,
I think. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's more to do with budget.
Take it?
No, I think it's more to do with budget. It's like it's completely different kind of the film they are spending for major films. Mm-hmm. Is like basically like not even sometimes as close to this small indie budget in America. So we're not like we don't have time to do coverage, So
audience reactions to the film, are they similar in different parts of the world, or?
I think different? It's similar, very similar. But then at the same time, I'm actually curious about how Japanese people will react. It's going to release on April 28th in Japan. And then oftentimes I have Japanese audience members in few of them in each screening. And they come up to me, mm-hmm. and to me they seem to have more emotional reaction than somehow like American audience, for example. So I'm curious, like what the reaction is gonna be in
Yeah, it's going to be interesting
Japan,
to see
right.
what Variety said about your film. Quote, picture a Japanese remake of Hello, My Name is Doris, shot through with an undertow of quiet desperation that wouldn't be out of place in a Christian Mangio film.
Oh my goodness.
I think that's a great compliment.
Right. But I think tonally it's different than
yes, it is.
Hello, My Name is
Tonally,
Doris.
it's totally unique.
I think I have to warn the audience just because also like Will Ferrell and Adam McKay are the executive producers. People have certain like a movie to in their image, but actually it's more like drama comedy. You know, it's not comedy drama. It's like drama comedy.
Yeah, and it surely is different, and it's really extraordinary. It's well worth seeing. Oh, Lucy, and thank you, Atsuko Hirayanagi. Hi, see, I knew I was going to mess your name up. Atsuko Hirayanagi has been our guest. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.